We are thrilled and very fortunate to be having this conversation with you. Linda Bove, you hold a special place in my childhood memories, so thank you for being with us today.
Thank you. Thank you. It's my pleasure.
While you have made a huge impact in the public mainstream through your work as an actress and performer, take us back and share with us how you came to find your place on the public stage. How did it all happen?
Really, it's interesting. I never foresaw it because there was no such thing as a professional actor or even a major in theater at Gallaudet University, the school I was attending at the time. So I majored in library sciences and basically saw myself working in a library somewhere, anywhere in the United States. I figured I'd get married and follow my man wherever he went and live happily ever after.
But you didn't quite do it like that, did you?
Well, actually, during my junior year, I decided to audition for a part in my college's theater production. I did it just for fun, but before I knew it, I was hooked. Even though a theater major wasn't available, I was highly engaged in the theater. And then fortunately, the National Theater of the Deaf was looking for a young ingenue to fill a role and approached me about joining their company. I ended up being a part of that company for 10 years, touring the country and performing internationally. I was just so fortunate. The opportunity just appeared in spite of my major. It was just luck, and never once did I have to work in a library.
The journey you took was the one for you.
Yes, right. I'm glad things turned out the way they did.
So tell us then, how did you end up on Sesame Street? How did all that come about?
Sure. While I was working with the National Theater of the Deaf, maybe 2 years into it, there was talk in the industry about this new innovative production. Sesame Street was going to be aired on PBS rather than the other networks. Their intention was to reach underprivileged children and families and to provide them with enriching opportunities and exposure, using a television program to show different communities and neighborhoods. So, to do this, they wanted to invite people of various backgrounds to appear as either a guest or a cast member and share what daily life looks like for these individuals. They would do this by introducing activities such as learn a new word of the day, or they would do a spin-off of a particular number, while at the same time teaching children to accept others' differences. David Hayes, who was the artistic director of the National Theater of the Deaf, chimed in and suggested the Sesame Street producers consider including a deaf person who could introduce sign language and even use that sign language as a teaching tool for people who have learning challenges and so on. They liked the idea, so several of the Sesame Street production staff came to one of the National Theater of the Deaf rehearsals, and after that, they asked me to join the Sesame Street cast. They felt that I fit their vision of what the show would portray, and I ended up working in that position for the next 32 years.
Wow!
Again, I think it was the perfect storm of luck and being in the right place at the right time.
It just all came together. You know, Linda, your role in Sesame Street really made an enormous impact on society as a whole throughout the world. You helped lay the foundation for seeing deaf people as belonging to a culture, not a disability. How do you feel that resonated throughout society, and how were you able to influence people at Sesame Street about that paradigm shift?
Yes, one of the primary concepts in creating Sesame Street was to not allow differences to interfere with or be seen as a disruptor in daily life, to not allow perceived differences to be turned into a source of stigma as taboo or be something to be feared. It allowed us to explore how the cast members, deaf and hearing, as well as some of the Muppet characters, could find ways to create understanding in our relationships. What a powerful way to model, for example, what a deaf person looks like. That it's not about disability or lack of hearing or a tragedy. On the contrary, it's a way to showcase sign language and how our way of communicating is unique. Keep in mind, when this program aired in the 70s and 80s, American Sign Language hadn't been recognized as a legitimate language taught in colleges and so forth. So I felt there was a huge responsibility, this obligation to appropriately represent the deaf experience as I knew it. There were other segments of the population with hearing loss that used other communication approaches. So I had to ask myself, what was my truth? Who am I? Me, Linda. I'm a deaf person. I use sign language to communicate. So I followed my truth and shared the deaf experience from a cultural core, not a disability core, because that was my truth. I was able to share how I live every day. This included showing lights that flash when someone rings my doorbell. Then we had fun with it, having Christmas lights flashing as a way of celebrating this difference. We turned negative perceptions into positive realities. It required me to give a lot of thought to how I approached my character and inspired those around me to consider the deaf perspective as they were writing the show. We were broadcasting the deaf experience, and we had to maintain its integrity. This was especially crucial for the children who were watching, and through the program, learning to associate positive impressions with being deaf. In my role, I provided a fresh, positive way of relating to deaf people. This was especially helpful to children who had difficulty with speech or learning. Sign language became another avenue or tool in which children could communicate and learn. This was hard to articulate to the production staff, so we managed it in segments. I'd ask that we portray certain things in a certain way, and then after the research department would present the program to the producers, we would fine-tune the segment to reflect exactly how it was handled from a deaf person's perspective. This whole process was such a rewarding experience, being able to work with people who had absolutely no idea about the life and culture of a deaf person.
That was a monumental responsibility.
Yes, it was for a young lady of 23, to be taking on the charge of a deaf experience while doing it justice. Fortunately, I had great support from my family and friends, and especially my husband, who was always there to encourage me. There were even a couple of close hearing friends that I would bounce ideas off of. And remember, we didn't have the technology of today. We didn't even have TTYs. So any phone call that I would make to the producers would be made through my hearing friends who would relay the calls for me. They would say, okay, here's Linda, and she wants to know if the script could be changed in this way or that way. And they would say, oh, okay, yeah, sure. In retrospect, I think, wow, what we went through just to communicate.
Times have surely changed.
They've changed a lot.
Through Sesame Street, you've had such a positive impact, specifically on children. How do you feel your influence on the show is going to play out in their lives and in their understanding of the deaf community?
I think there's been a big impact, more so than I initially realized. When you take into consideration my time on the show spanned over 20 to 30 years, the impact increases exponentially with the second generation. The first generation, who gained new insight on the deaf experience and challenged their previous understanding that being deaf means you're disabled, are now adults with children of their own. And their children are seeing the world with no filters, no preconceived notions that deaf people are disabled. They see sign language, deaf life, and they see it as cool and fun and positive. Children tend to see things in a very straightforward way, and it's important to take advantage of that. Children don't tend to get hung up on the inability to hear or jump to the negative side of what their ears can't do. These kids are open to the positive side of being deaf, and I feel fortunate to be able to plant the seed of language and culture in these kids. And this applies to deaf and hearing kids. The hearing children see deaf people in a positive light and hold on to that image of deaf people when they personally encounter a deaf person in their daily lives. As for deaf children, they're thrilled. They're validated. They see someone on TV speaking in their native language. I might also add that Sesame Street was one of the first shows to include closed captioning. So, deaf children were watching TV in a new way. The main program was in sign language, and the captioning was there to expose them to written English. And how exciting for them to see a deaf person using sign language. It's like they had a role model. Role models are so critical, and this gives me satisfaction that I stuck to my truth and followed the basic inclination I have to represent the deaf experience as I know it in a positive way. How lucky my role could impact both deaf and hearing children. I mean, children who can hear are signing everywhere. It's even reached our educational system where you can get foreign language credit.
Linda, you have become such a powerful exemplar.
I'm relieved. I'm so relieved. That means I did the right thing.
Oh, absolutely. You surely did. Okay, so what's left? People are exposed to so much these days. What's left to be done?
The work is not done. We're still working on the same kinds of things. From generation to generation, what we learn in school may get outdated. Let me share an example. So often, children are first introduced to the deaf experience through the story of Helen Keller. That same story has been passed down for decades now and represented as the entire deaf experience. But her story is the deaf-blind experience of the past. There is no story in textbooks about the modern deaf experience, about how deaf people have overcome and thrived. It's non-existent in any of the standard curriculum. Children in schools do not have anything but this same narrative. So, as they grow up, the only frame of reference they have is outdated and restricted. That's why the work must continue, and it means families, teachers, and schools must accept accountability too. Things are getting better. We have noticed how schools are stressing diversity in the curriculum, but we've yet to reach the standing we hoped for. We're just not there yet.
So there's more to do.
Yes, it's a work in progress. If we can all get on the same page, so often individuals miss out on that kind of exposure growing up, which means the work is ongoing. We must keep moving forward.
Linda, your work is never done.
No, it's going to take all of us.